Thank you, Don. I love the way that the clear word the passages. And so we're going to continue taking a look at the Beatitudes, which, as we've seen, are building blocks to a complete conversion. And so I'd like to invite you to join me again in Matthew chapter 5. Hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. And then today, verse 7, Matthew chapter 5, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. And so as we see these are building blocks to complete conversion, we see that after we are filled with the righteousness of God, we do not become self-righteous. We do not become holier than thou. We become merciful. The more we are like God, the less judgmental we become. The more we are like God, the more merciful we become. Because God is mercy. We saw last week that those who hunger and thirst for righteousness will be filled. And we saw in Ephesians 3:19 that as we again study and appreciate the breadth, the height, the depth of God's love, right? And so, keeping that in mind, if a church knows what day the Sabbath is, a church has a correct understanding of the state of the dead, that church knows all about clean and unclean foods and understands the sanctuary message. But if that church doesn't show mercy to wayward sinners, and that church doesn't show love to their brothers and sisters throughout the week, you don't really know how friendly a church is on Sabbath. You find out how friendly a church is on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's during the week you find out how friendly a church is. I had a friend here in Florida move to a section of Texas. I'm not going to say which part of Texas. But a couple of years later, she came back to Florida. And when I asked her how she liked it there, she said, everybody there was friendly, but nobody wanted to be your friend. And I knew exactly what she meant. Because we can show up at church, we can say hi, smile, be friendly, shake each other's hands. But it's during the week we find out how much we actually want to be each other's friend. And so a church can have the right understanding of the Sabbath, the state of the dead, all the other fundamental beliefs. But if that church does not practice love and mercy on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if that church is not practicing mercy throughout the week, that church is theologically incorrect. Because God is love. And for a church to be theologically correct, that church has to be practicing love throughout the week. And so God is love. So when we are filled with all the fullness of God, we are filled with His love. And let's take a look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the love chapter. In chapter 12 of 1 Corinthians, Paul is talking about the gifts of the Spirit. And then in chapter 13, he shares with us the greatest gift of all. And in verse 1, he says, "Though I speak with tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I'm becoming a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal or a changing cymbal, clanging cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy," now let's key into this because we as Seventh-day Adventists know we have the gift of prophecy, right? So let's pay attention. "And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge," so we know all the conspiracy theories going on in the spiritual realm and the spiritual world. And we know the things that are going to be happening, the events of last days. We know that. We have the spirit of prophecy. We know what's going on. "And I have that faith that I can move mountains, but have not love, I am nothing." I am nothing. The gift of prophecy without love means nothing. That's why I'm saying a church that has all those fundamental beliefs right, but isn't practicing mercy and compassion throughout the week is not a theologically correct church. And so many times we pride ourselves in knowing what is coming. We understand the mark of the beast. We understand there's secret societies out there and conspiracy theories and all of that. But when we get too much into that, when we start talking like it's these secret societies and their conspiracies that are going to bring, that are controlling everything. Friends, this world doesn't belong to secret societies. This is my Father's world. And He is the one controlling everything. Not secret societies, not conspiracy theories. This is my Father's world. And so too many times we get caught up into things like that, thinking that, oh, we have special insight, we have special knowledge, and we start getting puffed up. We're special. We know things that are going on, behind the scenes that other people don't know, and that makes us special. Paul's saying, no, that knowledge doesn't make you anything. What makes you special is you have love. And so, he goes on in verse 3. "And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing." I was memorizing this chapter when I was in the 3rd grade at an Adventist school, Tulsa Adventist Academy. And I remember reading that verse and thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. How can I give everything to the poor and die for my faith and not have love? I couldn't understand that. Later, I realized sometimes we do good things for the wrong reason. And I think that's what Jesus is talking about when he's talking to the Laodiceans. He says, I know your works, but you're lukewarm. Well, their problem was they were doing these good works for selfish motives. And their good works were hot, and their motives were cold. And when they put good works, he didn't say, if you're scared to go to hell, keep my commandments. He didn't say, if you want to go to heaven, keep my commandments. He says, if you love me, keep my commandments. It's not just about doing the right thing. It's about doing the right thing for the right reasons. And as a matter of fact, as we're studying this quarter about the crucible and our characters being tested, and many times we face persecution. Not only in the world, we face persecution sometimes in the church, sometimes in our own families. And a while back, several years ago, I was going through a time when I felt persecuted and I felt like my motives were pure, but they were being misinterpreted and misrepresented. And I was asking God why that was happening, and then suddenly it dawned on me. God is allowing people to misinterpret my motives. God is allowing people to think that I'm doing things for the wrong reason, to see if I'll keep doing good even if people still think bad of me. In other words, am I doing good just to get a good reputation? Or am I doing good regardless of what anybody else thinks? And that's the true test of character. Doing the right thing for the right reason, even when everybody says you're doing it for the wrong reason. That's a crucible. That is being tested. And so it's not just about doing the right things. It's doing the right things for the right reason. And then in verse 4, it says, love suffers long and is kind. Sometimes it's hard to be kind and suffer long. You know, I can do one or the other. But to suffer long and be kind, that can only be done by the grace of Christ living in me. That's Jesus in me. It's not me. Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy, does not parade itself, is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil. Now there's something important. Thinks no evil. I hear so many conspiracy theories today, and I see so much on Facebook where everybody just knows what everybody else's motives are, and they're evil, and they're just doing this for this, and it's like these Christians suddenly get the idea on Facebook they can read other people's hearts. Friends, we don't know why other people do what they do. That's not for us to judge. And if we're thinking evil of others, it's only because we're seeing ourselves in them. Or if we think they are doing something for the wrong motives, we think that because those are our motives. And I just think everybody else has the same motives I have. You know? If somebody wants to take up the offering because they want to take the money. Taking up the offering, I'd be taking some of the money. Back, and we can read it this way, starting with verse 4. God suffers long and is kind. God does not envy. God does not parade himself. God is not puffed up. God does not behave rudely. God does not seek his own. God is not easily provoked. God thinks no evil. God does not rejoice in no. And now abideth faith, hope, love, these three. But the greatest of these is love. You know, when Paul says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, understood as a child, I thought like a child. Again, the concept here, the context is talking about love. And again, doing things out of love, not out of selfish ambition. See, when I was a child, at my church, we would go in-gathering. Who remembers in-gathering? Okay. We would go in-gathering. And if us children raised a certain amount for in-gathering, we got a free trip to Six Flags Over Texas. Yeah, and so we were all excited about going to Six Flags. We're out there freezing in the Oklahoma winter and everything so that we could collect the money for in-gathering so we could go to Six Flags. We weren't collecting that money to help the poor and needy. We were collecting the money to go to Six Flags. And that's what Paul is talking about when he says, I was a child, I thought like a child. But when I became a man, I put childish things away. And the childish things that we put away when we grow up is doing the right thing, not for a trip to Six Flags. Doing the right thing, not for a pat on the back. Doing the right thing out of love. That's what grown-ups do. Do the right thing for the right reason. And again, Paul likens this to growing up. And I've been in situations where people will be mistreated and somebody will still help them even though that person has mistreated them, and somebody will tell them, don't do that for them. I heard somebody tell somebody once, don't cross the ocean to help somebody who wouldn't cross the street to help you. Well, I think to myself, that's funny because that's exactly what Jesus did. He left heaven to come die for people who wouldn't even cross the street for him. A parent looks after their child, and they feed their child, they clothe their child, they protect their child. The child may not appreciate it. The child may not ever say thank you. That child may not ever do anything for the parent, but the parent does it because the parent is the grown-up. And so when people are saying, oh, don't help anybody if they're not going to help you. Don't be merciful to anybody that wouldn't be merciful to you. Don't cross the street for anybody who wouldn't cross the street for you. I tell people, well, I cross the street for people who wouldn't cross the street for me because I'm the grown-up. And that's what grown-ups do. By God's love, we can all grow up into the measure, the stature, the fullness of Christ. And so there's been many times when sometimes I'm dealing with somebody much older than me, who maybe when I was going through a hard time, they weren't there for me. Maybe when I was grieving the loss of a loved one, they totally ignored me. Now they're grieving the loss of a loved one and they want me to comfort them. And even though they were never there for me, I comfort them because by God's grace, I'm the grown-up. God wants all of us to be grown up, to put away childish things. He wants us to be filled with all the fullness of God, and God is love. God is mercy. God is compassion. And so, when we're filled with the fullness of God, we do not become self-righteous. We do not become holier than thou. The more we are like God, the more merciful we become. The more forgiving of others we become. So that we can reflect His love to the rest of the world. God bless you. Amen.